Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. When you picture the engine driving the world's second largest economy, do you envision a bustling, futuristic tech hub, or a lone, dedicated artisan spending months carving a mythological dragon out of a single piece of jade?
Yeah, that is quite the contrast right out of the gate.
It really is. I mean, we usually just default to picturing one extreme or the other.
Exactly. But the reality on the ground is, well, it's a fascinating and honestly sometimes contradictory hybrid of the two.
So today we are exploring a brilliant piece of journalism titled How China Still Outworks the West.
Right.
And what we are really going to do here is critically interpret this massive disconnect.
Yeah, it's definitely a disconnect.
Because on one side you have this official narrative of what constitutes hard work, which is a highly specific ideal that the authorities literally mint into state-awarded medals.
Right, very official.
And then on the other side you have the actual incredibly complex reality of the modern Chinese workforce.
Yeah, because when you start digging into the details of, who is actually getting celebrated for their labor, where those people live, and the exact number of hours they are putting in, you uncover a completely different picture of what truly drives this economic powerhouse.
It's surprising.
No, absolutely. It challenges practically every assumption a listener in London or, say, Chicago might have about global labor, prosperity, and what it actually means to outwork the rest of the world.
I want to start with that official narrative because the way hard work is currently being defined and rewarded is such an interesting window into how policymakers view the economy.
It really is.
So the article highlights the story of a man named Yang Fuyu. He recently won a National Labor Medal, which is a huge, prestigious honor.
Huge honor. Yeah.
And when the press interviewed him, he just humbly said, "I am simply a jade maker."
Which, if you understand the intricacies of jade carving, is a massive understatement.
Well, there's absolutely nothing simple about it. Like, the piece he won for is called Nine Dragons Offering a Jade Disc.
Just the name alone sounds intense.
Right. He and his colleagues took this bumpy, irregular, incredibly difficult piece of stone and spent 5 unbroken months transforming it.
5 months. Wow.
The craftsmanship is unbelievable. The dragons are, ethereal, but they look so fierce they could genuinely bite your hand off if you reach for that disc.
Yeah, the level of intense physical dedication required to execute a vision like that over 5 months is staggering.
It really is.
And, well, that is exactly what these national labor medals are designed to do. They are awarded every year by the official Federation of Trade Unions to celebrate that exact type of meticulous, unwavering, head-down dedication.
To boost morale, essentially.
Exactly. The goal is to motivate the workforce and provide a morale boost. And we should be very clear right up front. I mean, winners like Mr. Yang richly deserve the praise.
Oh,
Their
absolutely.
skill is undeniable.
No one is debating the talent of the artisans. But I was looking at the broader list of who receives these awards, and my immediate reaction was just confusion. Well, it feels like the honors don't reflect the job market of today at all.
Yeah, they really don't.
Yeah.
While the individual winners are highly deserving, the overall mix of the awards reflects a somewhat outdated mindset.
Yeah.
The medals are intended to inspire a workforce that is incredibly dedicated, but one that is currently navigating some very severe, decidedly modern economic headwinds.
Right.
And the official recognition just hasn't caught up to what those headwinds actually look like.
It's a bit like handing out awards for the best horse-drawn carriage drivers while the rest of the world is transitioning to electric vehicles.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
I mean, it just doesn't line up, right?
It captures the distortion perfectly. It's not that driving a horse-drawn carriage isn't a difficult skill. It is.
Right.
But it's that the entire ecosystem around it has fundamentally shifted. If the state is primarily incentivizing and praising the traditional industrial and artisanal skills of the past, they are ignoring the profound employment challenges of the present.
Let's talk about those challenges, actually, because the resilience required by the average Chinese worker right now is incredible.
It really is.
You have millions of construction workers, for example, who are currently dealing with a very persistent slump in the property market.
And we really have to understand the sheer scale of that sector. For decades, massive infrastructure development and real estate were the primary, insatiable engines of employment growth in China.
Like the absolute backbone.
Right. If you needed a job, the physical building of the country was there to provide it. Now that this sector is slowing down, you have millions of people whose entire livelihoods were built around manual labor suddenly forced to pivot.
They just have to figure out a new way to survive in a shifting economy.
Exactly.
And it's not just manual laborers facing disruption either. White-collar workers are dealing with a completely different kind of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
They aren't worried about a property slump. They are staring down the barrel of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's the new invisible threat to the middle class. White-collar workers are suddenly competing with algorithms that can draft reports, analyze massive data sets, and, perform complex administrative tasks in a fraction of a second.
It's got to be terrifying.
It forces a very stressful, very rapid reassessment of what human skills are actually valuable in an office environment.
Now, whenever we talk about the Chinese economy shifting, the conversation inevitably turns to the booming high-tech manufacturing sector.
Right, the new wave.
Things like electric vehicles, solar panels, advanced batteries. That sector seems to be thriving. But does that boom actually translate into mass employment?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, and the answer is complex. The advanced manufacturing sector in China is indeed booming, but the employment mechanics are totally different from the factory booms of the 1990s or 2000s.
How so?
These new facilities are highly automated. They use advanced robotics and AI-driven supply chains. So while that high-tech boom is doing a highly effective job of terrifying Western automakers
And scaring German manufacturing workers.
Exactly. It's scaring them. But it is not actually employing mass numbers of Chinese workers. It's incredibly productive, but it is not intensely labor-intensive.
So you have this incredibly dynamic, highly stressed workforce like construction workers pivoting to new trades, office workers battling algorithms, and advanced factories relying on robots rather than massive human assembly lines.
Right.
But when you look at the official labor medals, are any of these modern realities reflected?
Not really.
I mean, I was looking at my notes on the actual industry breakdown of these awards, and I honestly had to double-check the math. It looked like traditional heavy industries were just sweeping the board.
They absolutely are. Let me give you the exact numbers to show just how stark this misalignment is.
Okay, hit me.
The honor roll is heavily skewed toward engineers, technicians, and traditional state sector workers. Let's compare two industries.
Okay.
The railway industry in China, which is vital, tangible, traditional infrastructure, employs roughly 1.8 million workers.
Got it. 1.8 million.
Meanwhile, financial services, which is modern, abstract, and service-oriented, employs over 12.3 million workers.
Wait, okay, so the financial sector is almost 7 times larger in terms of sheer human capital.
Yes, but when the authorities handed out the individual national labor medals, the railway industry received 18 winners.
And finance?
Financial services, despite having tens of millions more people, received 16.
That is wild.
Isn't it?
It perfectly illustrates that carriage driver analogy. The railway fits the historical mid-20th century mold of what the authorities picture when they imagine hard work, steel, sweat, and physical infrastructure.
Exactly.
Finance just doesn't fit the archetype, and it gets even more glaring when you look at the gig economy. Think about the delivery rider.
Oh, the absolute lifeblood of modern urban commerce in China.
Exactly. If you've seen a modern Chinese city, you know these riders are the invisible infrastructure making the whole thing work.
They really are.
They navigate insane traffic, work grueling hours, and keep millions of people fed and supplied. But at the grand awards ceremony in Beijing, they were virtually invisible.
Yeah.
There was just a tiny handful of them standing there looking incredibly conspicuous in their bright yellow and black biker outfits amidst this massive sea of traditional factory uniforms and formal suits.
It reveals a massive institutional blind spot.
A huge one.
The people who are quite literally carrying the modern digital on-demand economy on their backs are largely overlooked when it comes to official state-sanctioned recognition.
Okay, so the state is clearly rewarding the wrong industries, but surely, at the very least, they are rewarding the regions that are doing the heavy economic lifting, right?
Yeah.
Like, if there's a quota for these medals, I assume the massive economic powerhouse provinces are taking home the gold.
You would assume so, but this is where the geography of toil gets incredibly revealing. The awards are distributed based on a provincial quota system by the Trade Union Federation. But those quotas are completely mismatched with the actual location of the modern workforce.
Give me an example. How mismatched are we talking?
Take Guangdong province in the south. It is an absolute economic titan, a massive engine of global trade and manufacturing.
Right.
Guangdong accounts for almost 10% of all employment in China. But when the medals were allocated, Guangdong received less than 6% of the provincial quota.
Okay, so they are vastly underrepresented. Who is getting the extra medals then?
If you look at Beijing, Shanghai, and the older industrial heartland in the northeast, you combine their quotas, They claim over 20% of the metals.
Wow.
But combined, they provide less than 10% of the country's employment.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on this.
Sure, go ahead.
If Beijing and Shanghai are taking home an outsized share of the hard work metals, despite having a smaller share of the workforce, does that mean the individuals there are just working insane hours?
That's a good question.
Because the global stereotype of the Chinese tech worker in Beijing is the infamous 996 culture, right? Working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week.
Right.
If that's the reality, maybe they deserve the extra metals. Are they just working more hours?
It's a very logical assumption. The 996 culture is famous, and it absolutely exists in certain hyper-competitive tech sectors.
Okay.
But we have to separate a highly visible niche tech culture from the macroeconomic reality of an entire province. When we look at the macro data, it shows the exact opposite.
Wait, really? They work less?
Yes. There is an incredibly fascinating sociological tool called a time use survey.
Oh, I've heard of these. They track your whole day, right?
Yeah, exactly. Periodically, researchers will rigorously quiz thousands of people across the country, asking them to document exactly how they divide up every single hour of their day.
Like minute by minute.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the data from these surveys consistently shows that, on average, workers in wealthy hubs like Beijing and Shanghai actually put in fewer hours of paid labor than their comrades in poorer, less developed regions.
That is fascinating. So the people getting the most awards for hard work are statistically working fewer hours than the people in the overlooked provinces.
Yes.
Why does that happen?
It comes down to a fundamental economic principle. Wealth buys time.
Okay, unpack that for me.
As a region becomes richer, its economy undergoes a structural transformation. The workforce in a wealthy city like Shanghai is generally engaged in higher value, knowledge-based work.
Like finance or advanced tech.
Exactly, or corporate management.
Yeah.
That kind of work is highly productive per hour. It generates more economic value in less time compared to, say, purely manual agricultural or assembly line labor in a poorer province.
Right, that makes sense.
Because they generate more value per hour, they can afford the luxury of more leisure time.
So generally speaking, as a province gets wealthier, the hours go down.
Precisely. You can trace this trajectory almost perfectly across the country.
But I understand from the article there is one major exception to this rule.
There is. Economics is rarely uniform. The fascinating outlier here is Zhejiang province.
Right, Zhejiang. For context, this is the province that includes Wenzhou, which is legendary for its fierce, grassroots entrepreneurial spirit, and Hangzhou, which is a massive tech and e-commerce capital.
Exactly.
By all accounts, this province is incredibly prosperous, so following our rule, their hours should be dropping.
And yet, despite their immense wealth, the workers in Zhejiang continue to log surprisingly long hours of toil.
Really?
Yeah, they are burning the midnight oil right alongside much poorer provinces.
But why? If they have the wealth to buy leisure time, why are they still grinding so hard?
It likely comes down to the specific cultural and structural incentives of the industries clustered there. In tech and startup entrepreneurship, the line between work and life is notoriously blurry.
Oh, for sure.
Furthermore, the financial incentives for pushing a new company across the finish line or launching the next massive app are astronomical.
So it's the potential payout.
Yes. In a place like Hangzhou, wealth isn't functioning as a cushion to rest on. It acts as a catalyst. The prosperity is driven by a hyper-competitive ecosystem that practically demands long hours to survive and thrive, regardless of how much money is already in the bank.
Okay, this brings me to a point of genuine confusion, and I really need you to connect the dots for me.
All right, what's the confusion?
Well, if the wealthiest Chinese workers, like the ones in Beijing, Shanghai, and most other rich provinces, are actually working fewer hours, and the country as a whole is getting richer, the average hours must be dropping.
They are. The plunge is quite significant.
Right. I was looking at the time use survey data in the article, and something jumped out at me. In 2018, Chinese workers averaged 7 hours and 8 minutes of paid labor per day.
Yeah.
But in the most recent survey, that dropped to 6 hours and 23 minutes. So the hours are definitely falling.
They are.
But what really shocked me is, wait, 6 hours and 23 minutes. Isn't that almost exactly the same amount of time reported by workers in places like America and Germany?
It is practically identical.
So if the average daily hours of a Chinese worker are exactly the same as an American or German worker, how does the title of our article, How China Still Outworks the West, make any sense?
It's a great question.
Where does the outworking actually come from? What is the hidden variable here?
This is the core analytical payload of this entire discussion. It shatters a very pervasive Western stereotype.
Right, because people in the West tend to imagine the average Chinese worker chained to a desk or a factory line for 14 hours a day, drastically outpacing the daily hours of a worker in Munich or Chicago.
Exactly. But as you just noted, the daily average is practically the same. The biggest difference between China and Western economies isn't how long individuals work,
Okay.
is how many individuals are working.
The sheer volume of participation.
Exactly. It's the labor force participation rate.
Mm.
And the numbers are staggering.
Hit me with the numbers.
In China, over 75% of people between the ages of 18 and 59 participate in some form of paid labor.
75%. That is massive.
It is. Now, let's compare that to the United States. The U.S. classifies its age groups slightly differently for these statistics, usually looking at 18 to 54-year-olds as the prime working demographic.
Okay.
But even looking at that prime group, the equivalent percentage of people in the U.S. workforce is only 56%.
75% versus 56%. That is a chasm.
It's a huge gap.
So it's not that one Chinese worker is doing the job of two Western workers. It's that out of every 100 people in society, you just have vastly more individuals actively stepping out of their homes and contributing to the economy.
That is the true engine. That is the shock absorber for global supply chains.
Wow.
But to truly understand this, we have to ask why. Why is the participation rate so exceptionally high in China compared to the West?
Yeah, what's driving that?
And the answer largely comes down to the structural differences in how comprehensive social safety nets are designed.
Walk me through that mechanism. How exactly does a safety net impact whether someone decides to work or not?
Think of a social safety net in a Western country like Germany or the U.S. as a formal financial bridge.
A bridge. Okay.
If an auto worker is laid off, or someone decides to go back to school, or they want to stay home to raise young children, there are often robust state-sponsored mechanisms.
Like unemployment insurance or child subsidies.
Right, or comprehensive public pensions. These benefits allow that person to completely exit the workforce for a period of time and still survive. They cross the bridge.
I see.
Statistically, they drop to 0 hours of paid labor, and they fall out of the participating column entirely.
Okay, I understand that. But in China, the structure is different.
Precisely. The comprehensive, formal, state-sponsored safety nets do not operate in the exact same way or offer the exact same comprehensive coverage across all demographics, particularly for rural or migrant workers.
So the bridge isn't always there?
Exactly. Because that specific formal bridge isn't always there, a vast number of people who might exit the workforce entirely in the West choose to remain economically active in China.
So if a factory worker is laid off in Guangdong, they might not drop to 0 hours and collect unemployment. They might immediately pivot.
Exactly. They might start driving for a rideshare app. They might help run a relative street stall. They might take up part-time informal gig work.
Just doing whatever they can to get by.
Right. They might only be working 2 or 3 hours a day, but they are chalking up at least some hours.
Oh, I see the math now. So having millions of people working these informal, part-time 2 or 3 hour shifts drags the national average of daily hours down to that 6 hours and 23 minutes mark.
Yes, it pulls the average time down.
Oh, because they're still logging some hours, it skyrockets the overall participation rate up to 75%.
You've got it perfectly. That is the exact mathematical and sociological dynamic at play.
You know, when you really unpack that mechanism, it's actually incredibly moving.
It really is.
If you're a listener sitting in Europe or North America wondering why this matters, this is the backbone of the global economy you rely on. It is a profound testament to the unparalleled resilience, the intense dedication, and the sheer industriousness of the Chinese people.
It absolutely is. It's a level of societal mobilization that is hard to overstate.
Right. It's not just folks in their prime corporate earning years. It's people across all demographics, from young gig workers to older citizens, constantly stepping up, adapting to brutal economic shifts, finding a way to contribute, and making sure their families are supported.
Yeah, that adaptability is key.
To have 3/4 of your adult population actively engaged in the labor force, whether they are meticulously carving jade dragons for 5 months, writing complex code in a Hangzhou high-rise, or navigating traffic to deliver groceries, that volume of human effort is awe-inspiring.
Truly.
That is the true reason China outworks the West.
It is a powerful framing and, frankly, a much more accurate one than the official narrative we started with.
Yeah, for sure.
And, the policymakers are actually acutely aware of this. They know how vital this immense 75% participation rate is to the stability and growth of the national project.
It's their biggest asset.
Exactly. In fact, it's why you occasionally hear debates among authorities regarding welfare policies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a real stated concern that introducing overly generous Western-style welfare schemes might alter these exact work incentives. They know this broad participation is their greatest economic advantage.
But history and economics suggest that things rarely stay static.
They don't.
Yeah.
And that is what makes looking ahead so fascinating. We are already seeing the average hours drop as general prosperity increases.
Right, the 6 hours and 23 minutes.
Yeah. The desire for a little more leisure time, the pursuit of a better work-life balance, these aren't just Western concepts. They are universal human aspirations that naturally emerge as a society secures its basic economic needs.
Right, nobody wants to just toil endlessly if they don't have to. You want to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Absolutely.
You want to spend time with your children, travel, or maybe just appreciate a beautiful piece of carved jade without having to be the exhausted artisan who spent 5 months making it.
Exactly. And the time use survey data clearly shows this shift is already organically underway. As provinces get wealthier, the hours shorten. The workforce is evolving.
So as we wrap up this analysis, what is the big takeaway for the future?
It leaves us with a massive forward-looking question to consider regarding the global economy.
Let's hear it.
If the average hours worked in China are steadily dropping as the country gets richer, following the exact same historical trajectory that we saw in Western economies during the 20th century, what happens to the global economic balance when that incredible 75% participation rate inevitably begins to shift?
Wow.
Yeah, as the population ages and wealth increases, how will policymakers adapt their incentives to keep the next generation engaged?
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.